To begin your drawing, you're going to add some guide marks. You're going to draw a vertical line down the center of your page, as well as a horizontal line across your page. You're going to get 4 quadrants or 4 boxes. If you feel you need a little bit more help or more guide marks to help you judge space, you can divide those 4 quadrants further, or just one quadrant you can divide further. So here you can see that upper left box, I divided into 4 more boxes so I could really see where in that upper left-hand corner my ellipse is. So I'm constantly measuring from one guide mark to the next to figure out the placement of where my ellipse goes. Where does it end? How wide is it? And you can see I'm moving the pencil back and forth, kind of measuring in between. So before you start focusing on the details, the first thing you want to do is just really make sure everything's in the right spot. And then when you're confident that everything's in the right spot, you can go ahead and start making sure you get the curve of your ellipse correct and maybe start adding the edges of your cups. But you're constantly measuring the space from one guide mark to the edge of your cup, or the space between your ellipse. Make sure it's the right width, the space from the top of your paper to the edge of your ellipse. And when you're confident, then you want to go ahead and draw those ellipses or those circles in perspective. Now, it doesn't happen right away. Don't expect your first try to be perfect. You're going to have to reevaluate and look at your reference photo a little bit more, and you'll make some mistakes, but that's okay. You can erase and give it another shot. As long as you take your time and have patience with yourself and really find those mistakes early instead of quickly moving to the next part of your drawing, the drawing will go really smoothly and it will look more accurate and complete. A common mistake is to get caught up in those details and rush from one area of the drawing to the next. But if you really just slow down and make sure everything's placed correctly and constantly look at your reference, you'll have a much smoother time. So you can see here I'm doing a lot of erasing and fixing and getting that edge curved just right. So take your time and just don't expect it to be perfect from the beginning. Another big tip is to make sure you draw very, very, very lightly. Even your guide marks, your outlines, everything. It's tempting to go dark, but you'll run into problems and it'll be very hard to erase in the end. If you keep your drawing and you get in the habit of drawing really light, it's so much easier to erase. So here we're going to speed up the video a little bit just so we can save some time. But I want you to pay attention to how long we spend really planning out where everything is and making sure the drawing is correct before we move on to details. And it's not perfect. Like, you have to make a couple mistakes and measure one thing up against the next and look at your guidelines and erase a little bit until you get that ellipse right. But we're constantly looking at the edges of the ellipses, looking at the sides of the ellipses, and just making sure that you're happy with them before you move on and start adding the details. So here you'll see each one we're kind of measuring out. We're measuring the space around it, the space between it, the space from one guide mark to the next, the space from the edge of one cup or the space between one cup and another cup, and just making sure that you're getting the drawing right and the bones or the base of your drawing correct before we start adding all those nice contour lines. So once you're happy with your drawing, the next step is to add the cross contour lines to give your drawing that illusion of that three-dimensional form. This is an exercise to get you to understand how the form is dimensional and not flat. So you're following the curvature of the side of the cup using lines that follow the edge or the contour. So you want to keep in mind that as your ellipse moves closer to your eye level, it gets flatter and more like a straight line. And as it moves further away from your eye level, the ellipse or the edge becomes rounder. So you're just going to use your pencil very lightly to start and get those contour lines in there. Now you'll notice not every line is going to be perfect. You're going to make some mistakes. It's going to look a little quirky in some areas, but that is okay. It's not supposed to be perfect. Once you are happy and you have everything drawn in pencil, you can go over with a marker and kind of just trace over your lines and give yourself a little bit of grace here and have fun with it and play around. There's no exact perfect spacing between your lines. They're going to look a little uneven in places, but that's okay. You want to kind of embrace that unevenness and maybe play around with adding some more lines in between the lines that you drew with your pencil. And then going back and maybe thickening up some of the lines with your marker. Here's where you're kind of having fun with it and making almost like a pattern out of it and seeing what happens when you thicken up some lines, when some lines go from thick to thin, when you add more lines in between your lines, and just kind of play around with it until it looks interesting and it's pleasing for you to look at. So you'll see here we're going over with the marker. Of course, the video is sped up a little bit just so that you could see from start to finish. But here we're going to erase all those pencil marks. And we're going to take the marker and just kind of play around with making pattern out of it. We're going to make some lines really close together and some lines a little bit thicker. And again, there's no right or wrong here. This is all just personal style. As long as you are following those contours, here you're just adding design and kind of making a pattern out of your thick and thin lines. Here I'm darkening the edge of the ellipse just to make it stand out a little bit. You can see this is all just intuitive. I'm using my intuition and thinking, I think this will look good if this line is a little bit darker. It'll add a little contrast here. Again, there's no right or wrong. You just want to kind of relax into it. See how lines are starting to stand out a little bit more than others. Just adding a little bit of variety to our design.